Welcome back to Haunted Fears. Tonight you and the rest of the Haunted Fears horror family are stepping into the dark spine of America with a new nightmare. 11 most disturbing. True Appalachia, deep woods horror stories. Out here, the mountains swallow screams, trails vanish into black timber, and something old listens from just beyond your flashlight's edge. As you hear these voices from the woods, ask yourself, could you make it through one night out there alone? If you're brave enough, tighten your headphones, hit subscribe, join the Haunted Fears horror family, and whatever you do, don't ignore that sound behind you. Have you ever been so sure you were alone in the woods that the silence itself felt wrong? That night, on Droop Mountain, the silence felt like a living thing pressing its hand over the forest mouth. My name is Liam, and this happened a few years ago when I was living in West Virginia, not far from Droop Mountain Battlefield State Park. The place has real Civil War history behind it, monuments, old cannons, the whole preserved ridge where men actually died, and locals love telling you how the hill remembers things. I never really bought into the ghost stuff. For me, the park was just a quiet spot to clear my head after late shifts. That night, it was a little after 1 a.m. The sky was overcast, no moon, but the kind of thin cloud that still lets some faint starlight seep through. The air was cool and damp, heavy with leaf mold and that faint metallic tang old battlefields seemed to carry. I parked at the small gravel lot near the overlook and stepped out into the dark, listening to the chirp of insects and the steady chorus of frogs from the low ground. The trail I liked runs along the tree line below the main monument area, skirting the edge between maintained park and dense woods. On normal nights, you hear everything out there. Owls, crickets, the hiss of wind pushing through the leaves, distant highway noise humming like a far-off ocean. The forest around Droop Mountain never really feels empty. It feels crowded with sound. That's why the silence hit so hard. It happened fast, like someone thumbed a remote and muted the world. One moment, there was a full background track, tree frogs, katydids, a single owl calling from somewhere above the ridge, and the next moment, nothing. No wind, no bugs, no distant dogs, no rustle of small things in the underbrush. The only sound left was the crunch of my boots on the gravel and the blood in my ears. I stopped walking. The silence settled around me like thick insulation, flattening space so I couldn't tell how close or far anything was. Even the air felt different, heavier, colder. I remember my breath coming out in a small white cloud, even though it wasn't that cold when I left the car. The battlefield was behind me, just out of sight up the hill. I could picture the cannons and stone markers up there, the little plaques describing troop movements and casualty counts. Standing in that hush, I suddenly imagined all of that sound, the shouting, the gunfire, the screams, still hanging above the ridge somewhere, just outside human hearing. It was such an intrusive thought that I actually shook my head to get rid of it. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a shift in wind, a temperature drop, something that made the bugs quiet down. Maybe a predator moved through. That's what I clung to. The woods go silent when something bigger comes around. Fine. Logical. I forced my feet to keep moving, the beam of my headlamp bouncing along the narrow path. My light only cut a shallow tunnel through the dark, pale gravel, glossy leaves, the dark trunks of trees on either side. Just beyond that cone of light, the woods became a solid wall. My footsteps sounded too loud now, each crunch echoing back like I was in a hallway instead of an open forest. About 30 seconds into that unnatural quiet, I heard it. At first, it was just a faint electronic distortion, like when a cheap speaker tries to handle bass it can't manage. A little crackle, a warble in the air from somewhere deep in the tree line to my right. I stopped again, listening, my headlamp aimed uselessly into the packed black between the trunks. The sound sharpened, pulled itself into shape. It used my name. Liam. It dragged the vowel out too long, as if someone was scrubbing my name back and forth on a damaged tape. The tone was wrong, flat in some places, weirdly pitched in others, but it wasn't robotic. It sounded like a human throat trying and failing to copy a recording. The voice wasn't loud. That's what made it worse. It was just loud enough to be conversational, like someone standing 10 or 15 feet into the trees, talking halfway under their breath. Underneath the distortion, there was a breathy quality, the faint moistness of real lungs pushing real air. Every hair on my body lifted. It felt like someone had taken a cold finger and run it down my spine, vertebra by vertebra. There are only a few possibilities when something in the dark says your name. Someone you know, someone who has followed you, or something that learned it. In that second, none of those options felt good. My first instinct was to rip my headlamp off and shine it between the trees, but I didn't move. I just stood there, rooted to the path, listening to my own heart pounding and the tiny ring of blood in my ears. The silence in the forest pressed harder, like it was waiting. Then it made the mistake of trying again. Lee, I am. The second attempt stuttered, glitched. It hit the first half clean, then stretched the middle as if it got stuck on the sound. The ending snapped off too hard, consonant hitting like a static pop at the end of a transmission. I heard wetness behind the distortion this time, a faint gurgle on the exhale, like someone playing back a voice through a throat full of water. That's when I realized something else. It hadn't come from one fixed point. The first time, the voice had been down and to my right. The second time, it came from slightly ahead, still in the tree line, as if whoever, or whatever, was sliding parallel to the trail while speaking. I finally managed to move. I didn't run yet. I took 2 slow steps backward, keeping my eyes on the dark between the trunks. Every instinct screamed to turn and sprint, but another part of me was terrified of exposing my back to that black wall of trees. The woods obliged by escalating. The third sound it made wasn't my name. It was a scream. It started too low, like it forgot where to begin. A cracked moan dragged itself upward into a pitch that finally caught the shape of a human scream and then kept going, overshooting into something shrill and metallic. It sounded like a woman and a man screaming at the same time through a broken radio, the edges of the sound tearing in and out as if a hand was crushing the speaker cone with every syllable. It rode through the trees in a long, messy wave. The air seemed to vibrate with it. My headlamp beam shook as my hands started to tremble. Then the forest reacted. From somewhere high above, there was a sudden explosion of wings. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of birds launched from the canopy in one violent burst, startled into the air all at once. I could feel the movement more than see it, a rush of displaced air and the rapid drum of wings beating against leaves. Their silhouettes flickered across the upper branches like a dark river poured into the sky. The scream cut off mid-note, like someone yanked a cord. That broke me. I turned and ran. The path back to the parking lot isn't long, but in that moment, it felt endless. My headlamp bounced wildly, throwing smeared images of gravel, roots, and my own jerking shadow. My breath roared in my ears, harsh and ragged, louder than anything the forest was making, or not making, around me. Except it wasn't the loudest thing. To my right, in the tree line, something ran with me. I didn't see it. I need to be clear about that. I never saw a shape, never caught a glimpse of eyes glowing in the dark. What I had instead was sound. The crisp, light impacts of something moving on the forest floor, perfectly matched to my pace. When I sped up, it sped up. When I stumbled and flailed for balance, there was a corresponding stutter of footfalls in the leaves. It stayed just out of my light's reach, close enough that I could track it by ear, but not close enough to show itself. Whatever it was comfortable in that black band of trees, running blind through roots and rocks without a misstep. At one point, I heard it exhale, a single, wet grunt, almost a laugh, pushed out in time with its stride. The sound was low and throaty, but carried the same strange double quality as the voice, as if there were two slightly out-of-sync layers to it. I wanted to scream for help, but I knew no one was out there. The park was empty at this hour. I focused on the idea of the car like it was a doorway back into reality. Metal, glass, locks, headlights. Just reach the car. Don't fall. Don't look right. Don't slow down. The trail curved slightly left, and for a few seconds the trees came closer, the forest pressing in so tight that branches slapped my shoulders. My light brushed the first rank of trunks and caught nothing but bark and leaves, but the sound in the undergrowth came closer too. I could hear sticks snapping now, the soft thump of something heavy pushing off from the ground. It was enjoying the chase. That thought slid into my head uninvited, and I couldn't pry it out. Whatever this was, it had orchestrated the silence, practiced my name until it could mostly say it, then screamed just to watch the forest explode and me break. The gravel under my boots changed texture, turning coarser, sharper. That meant I was close to the parking lot. My lungs burned, my legs shook. The sound in the tree line kept pace, never flagging, never even sounding winded. When the lot finally came into view, lit only by the dim reflection of my headlamp off my car's pale rear bumper, I almost sobbed with relief. I hit the edge of the gravel square and cut hard toward the driver's side, my keys already in my hand. The tree line ended about 20 feet from the car, a thin fringe of darkness beyond the open gravel. The running in the woods stopped exactly at that line. No slowing down, no crunch of leaves as it came to rest. One stride, another, and then nothing, as if it had slammed into an invisible wall at the edge of the trees. The sudden absence of its footfalls was as jarring as the earlier silence had been. I fumbled the door open, dove in, and slammed it behind me. The car felt like a flimsy shell, but it was a barrier, and that was enough. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keys once before getting them into the ignition. The instant the engine turned over, the forest found its voice again. The frogs came back first, their calls swelling up from the low ground in a messy, overlapping chorus. Crickets started chirping, hesitant at first, then with full confidence. Somewhere, an owl hooted, perfectly ordinary and bored. The night reset itself like someone had changed channels, away from whatever station I had been stuck on. I sat there with my hands clenched on the steering wheel, headlights off, listening to the forest act like nothing had happened. Just before I turned the lights on, something called my name one last time. Liam. Soft, almost normal this time, the distortion tucked away at the edges of the sound. It came from the tree line, right where the darkness thickened beyond the reach of the gravel. I turned the headlights on and pointed them straight at the trees. Nothing, just trunks, leaves, and the pale ghosts of drifting insects in the beams. I drove away without looking back. People who hear this story always ask the same thing. Why didn't you go back in daylight to check for tracks, for speaker, for some human explanation? Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone was out there with a recorder and a sick sense of humor. Maybe. But I know how it felt when the forest cut the sound off like a switch. I know how it moved beside me, perfectly matched to my steps, never slipping, never stumbling. And I know how it said my name, starting rough and wrong, then getting just a little better each time, like it was learning. Whatever lives in those trees near Droop Mountain doesn't need me to come looking for it. It already knows how to call me. How well would you sleep if you found out your childhood boogeyman was a very real, very dangerous man who knew your name? My name is Noah, and growing up in eastern Kentucky's backwoods meant learning which hollows to avoid before you could tie your shoes. The adults never explained. Just a sharp, "don't go in there," that hung heavier than any ghost story, making that one particular cut between the hills feel like a mouth waiting to swallow kids whole. It was high summer, the air so thick with heat it clung to your skin like wet flannel. I was 12, stuck at my aunt's place with my cousin, while the family scattered to a funeral across the county line. Boredom hit hard after we'd exhausted the creek rocks and rusted car hulks along the main road. Every conversation circled back to that forbidden spot. The holler nobody named outright. The one where warnings came wrapped in whispers about things that don't forgive trespassers. "Bet it's just junk down there," Cousin said, spitting a grass stem. "Old cars, maybe a cave." "Or what they say," I shot back, though my gut twisted. The stories weren't wild tales of lights or screams. They were practical. Folks vanishing for days, coming back hollow-eyed, never speaking of it. No one believed haints anymore, but belief wasn't required. Fear was. We hit the logging road at midday, gravel crunching under sneakers, worn thin from barefooting. The turnoff wasn't marked. No sign, no fence. Just a shallow dip where the ditch shallowed enough for kids to scramble down without twisting an ankle. Brush swallowed us fast, laurel and rhododendron closing like a zipper. Light dimmed to that perpetual dusk hollows horde, the kind where noon feels like closing time at a bar. Even birds went quiet, like they knew better. The air shifted first, not rot but a bite. Sharp chemical tang, like bleach mixed with model glue stinging the nostrils. Under it, faint tobacco, the cheap kind that leaves your clothes reeking for days. Cigarette butts littered the faint path, some fresh, mashed into mud still damp from morning dew. Someone walked this daily, tended it. The truck came into view tucked under saplings, rust claiming the fenders, one door long gone, vines threading the cab like veins. Flat tires, shattered windshield glittering in the weak light, abandoned at first glance. But the tailgate held a crisp blue tarp, folded military neat, and boot prints circled the cab, deep treads recent. Nobody leaves trash that tidy. Past it, the ground leveled to a cramped flat by the creek's orange trickle. Boards spanned the water, slick gray planks groaning under our weight. On the far side, workspace improvised from junk. A door slab on cinder blocks served as table, scarred with jar rings and stained dark in spots. Blue barrel half buried, tubing snaking into brush. Propane tanks stacked neat. A fire-blackened drum nearby. I knew moonshine setups from overhearing uncles. Copper coils hidden in the coils of roots, jars, bubbling secrets. This was active, protected. Meat hung from wire between trees, pale bundles and cheesecloth, dripping slow. Size of forearms, colorless save darkening patches where fluid wept. Flies hummed lazy circuits. Deer, possum. Summer heat made the question curdle in my throat. "Noah," Cousin hissed, eyes flicking left. Not a finger point. A chin jerk. Trail cam strapped to bark, lens winking black. Another higher camouflaged pour. A third across the clearing. The whole pocket watched, recording timestamps, faces, names if you lingered. Stomach dropped. The warnings rewrote themselves. No haints, no witches, just consequences. Human ones. Brush crackled upstream. Cigarette smoke thickened. Direction now. Boot on grit, metal clink. Shells in a pocket, maybe. Voice cut calm as pond water. "Y'all lost or just stupid?" We pivoted slow. Man materialized from shade. Average build, but wiry strong, like fence wire under flannel. Ball cap shadowed eyes flat as wet shale. Shotgun low across thigh, not raised, just present. Cigarette dangled, ash defying gravity. He scanned us top to bottom, unhurried. Smile ghosted lips, not warming eyes. "Reckon you're Noah," he said to me. To Cousin. And his shadow. My name from his mouth iced blood. "How?" Cameras didn't speak. He nodded at the nearest lens. "Watch long enough, patterns show. Faces stick. Been warned since you could walk, ain't ya?" Cousin swallowed audible. "Just explorin'." Man exhaled smoke sideways. "Explorin's what gets kids carried out in bags." Glanced at his operation. Barrels, meat, tubing. Like inventory check. Satisfied, shifted shotgun forearm ready. "Seen what ain't for seein'. My lapse." Paused, eyes weighing. "Go home. Say you found nothin'. Folks askin' you wandered. Spooked yourselves." Nods frantic. "But." Voice dropped octave, casual lethal. Catch you past that turn again. Shotgun lifted fraction reminder. No stories, no searching bodies. Hills claim what don't belong. Fact, not threat. Weather report from a killer. Jerked head up slope. We backed away, then turned. Steps measured till out of sight. Every nerve screamed sprint. Cameras tracked. Expected shotgun blast, crumpling us into creek mud. Neighbors with the hanging meat. Hit sunlight like slap. Cousin gasped. He'd do it. Knew without words. Calm men with guns and secrets don't posture. Never full truth. Aunt eyed our silence, pallor. Down that way. Mumble about far walk, scared shadows. Her stare said she knew. Wouldn't press. Night, porch talk leaked through screen. Boys poke where shouldn't, uncle. Long they dodge that man's holler. Aunt. Still running it. Long as left alone. Easier haints than truth. Laughter brittle. Clicked. Boogeyman real. Neighbor. Known quantity traded with. Nodded past. Ghost safe or lie for kids. Grown now, cities away. Doors lock reflex. Sleepless retrace path. Truck, cams, meet. Him stepping shade. No claws. Just man owning my name. Guarding empire with buckshot. So yeah, how well would you sleep knowing your boogeyman breathed, shot straight, remembered faces? If your flashlight beam landed on something no human mind has a shape for, would you run or freeze? My name is Oliver, and some nights in Braxton County, West Virginia, the sky doesn't just drop stars. It spits things that shouldn't exist. It was late September, that sticky time when summer clings to the hills like it knows winter's coming to strip everything bare. My brother and I were driving back from a buddy's place off Route 19, the kind of rural back road where your headlights are the only company for miles. Fog was rolling in thick from the farmland, turning cornfields into ghost walls that swallowed the beams. Distant farm dogs had been barking their heads off when we passed the old church 5 miles back. Routine night noise. But now even that had cut out clean, like someone muted the world. The road curved around a low ridge, black against the star-pricked sky. That's when it happened. A streak of greenish fire punched over the tree line, silent but burning so bright it lit the fog like neon underwater. No engine roar, no sonic boom, just a fat, wobbling orb dropping hard behind the hill, maybe half a mile off. It hit with a dull thump we felt through the truck's frame, close enough to rattle the glove box. Brother slammed the brakes. Meteor, he said, voice already hungry for whatever dumb adventure this was. Too slow, too green. I was out before he killed the engine, gravel crunching under boots. Curiosity burned hotter than fear. Rural boredom makes you chase lights like kids chase fireflies. He grabbed the big mag light from under the seat and followed, muttering about telling the story later. The climb was sloppy. Fog so wet it beaded on our skin. Pasture grass sucking at our shoes. Barbed wire we vaulted with curses. Air got heavier up the slope, carrying a faint tang like wet metal left in the rain. Dogs should have been going nuts by now. Every farmhouse within earshot had a hound. But silence pressed thicker than the mist. Even our breathing sounded wrong, swallowed fast. At the ridge top, fog pooled ankle deep, glowing faint from our flashlight. The object had gouged a shallow depression in red clay, smoking edges steaming into the night. No wreckage, no fire, just a wide, glassy scorch mark pulsing dull orange at the center, like embers under ash, size of a small car. Smell hit then, ammonia sharp enough to water eyes, mixed with hot circuitry. Crash landed, brother whispered, sweeping the light. Where's the... His beam caught it first. Movement in the fog, 15 yards downslope. Tall. Too tall. The shape resolved slow through the haze, 10 feet easy, narrow at the base, widening to a flared skirt like an inverted bell. Metallic sheen catching the light wrong, not reflecting, absorbing, then spitting it back dimmer. Top half tapered to a cowl head, no neck, no shoulders, just smooth contour ending in nothing recognizable. Then the face. 2 red circles hung where eyes should be. not glowing but lit from inside. Steady crimson like brake lights through blood. No pupils, no whites, no flicker. Just perfect, unblinking orbs floating in black cal space. No mouth registered, no features. The shape defied outline. Part machine, part body, all wrong. My brain locked. Fight, flight, freeze. None worked. Legs turned concrete. Brother's light shook, carving the silhouette sharper with every jitter. It noticed. A hiss started low, metallic. Not snake, not steam, but servos straining under pressure, like hydraulics bleeding air. Volume climbed slow, layering frequencies that buzzed teeth fillings. Ammonia stench spiked, burning sinuses, coating tongue with copper aftertaste. Fog swirled unnatural around its base, as if the thing displaced it without touching ground. Back, Brother croaked, voice paper thin. His light stayed locked, same as mine. We couldn't look away. It shifted, not a step, a glide. Base stayed level, skirt sliding forward, smooth as oil on glass. No footfalls, no ground disturbance. Red eyes dimmed, fraction, then brightened, pulse quick, measuring distance. Hiss modulated, deliberate now, scanning us like radar ping. Church bells tolled faint from the valley, one slow peal cutting the hiss for half breath. Old roadside chapel, miles off. Sound anchored reality for a second. Dogs silent still, fog thickening, our truck headlights twin stars far below. It closed 10 yards, effortless. Details sharpened, unwilling. Skirt etched fine circuits glowing faint green. Cowhead ridged vertically like gills. Arms, if arms, hung thin, jointless, ending in flared pads that didn't swing natural. Height impossible up close, blocking half the sky behind it. Brother broke first. Run! His light swung wild as he bolted upslope, beam slashing grass. I stumbled after, heart slamming ribs, ammonia choking lungs. Footing vanished, mud, roots, fog blinding. Hiss chased, rising pitch, Doppler warping as it matched speed. Gliding faster than running men. No footsteps behind, just air displacement whooshing skirt edges. Hiss modulating excited. Red glow bled through fog, painting our calves hell-light. Brother hit wire fence, tore shirt ripping over. I vaulted blind, barb snagging jeans, sprawling dashboard side down the hill. We slid, rolled, hit gravel gasping. Truck door flew open, keys fumbled, engine caught first turn. Slammed reverse, gravel spraying. Rear view showed ridge empty, fog unbroken. Hiss faded to memory. Drove 5 miles before dogs barked again. Brother white-knuckled dash, silent till church passed. What? Was... Nothing from here, I cut him. Voice shook. Not anymore. Air still reeked ammonia inside cab. Windows down didn't help. Never reported. Locals knew 1952 Flatwood stories. Kids seeing monsters after fireballs. Air Force laughing it off as owls, meteors. We weren't first. Wouldn't be last. Farmhouses dotted that ridge. Someone else's dogs went quiet that night. Years later, driving past, fog same. I pull over sometimes. Flash. Phone light up the slope, half expecting red pulse reply. Brother quit rural roads after. Got city job. Me. Still chase lights. But now when green streaks sky, I lock doors first. Shape haunts worse than sound. Human mind fills blanks with faces, limbs, purpose. That had none. Just presence, observing, cataloging, gliding silent. Dogs go quiet when something catalogs you. So yeah, if flashlight hits formless shape from elsewhere, you run or freeze. I did both. Still smell ammonia on bad nights. If you heard your own name whispered deep in a sealed mine where no one living is supposed to be, how long would you stay calm? And what if every sound around you said the past never really left? My name is James, and before this, the deepest I'd ever been underground was a tourist cave with handrails and a gift shop. That's not what number 9 was. No. 9 was a dead coal mine carved into a southern West Virginia hillside, a place the old company town had wrapped in a kind of collective flinch. Folks didn't say when the explosion happened so much as after number 9, like the blast was a season that had rolled through and never quite ended. By the time I showed up, the mine had been sealed for decades. The town half empty, tipple rusting, company houses sagging into the hollows. Our team was there for a modern survey. Laser scanners, ground penetrating this and that, all the tools you throw at old wounds when you want to turn them into data. It sounded clean, clinical, on paper anyway. The first time I saw the portal, it didn't look like an entrance so much as a scar. Dark rectangle framed by concrete and rusted I-beams, brush clawing at the sides. Someone had bolted a metal door over it after the disaster, but that door now hung open, warped and sandblasted by time. Cool air poured out in a steady breath that smelled like dry coal dust and something older, a mineral cold that clung to the back of your throat. Inside, our helmet lamps carved thin tunnels of light through a darkness that felt almost solid. It wasn't the kind of dark you get at night on a mountain road where stars soften the edges. This was blackness with weight, pressing at the edges of the beam, always ready to swallow whatever the light left behind. I kept telling myself it was just a job. Go in, map the tunnels, take readings, pack up, go home. Safety protocols were drilled into us. The mine had been inspected and declared stable enough for limited access. The explosion that killed those men had blown through, burned off the gas, and the mine had been cooling ever since. That's what I told myself. Still, every step down the old main slope felt like an argument against common sense. Coal dust puffed under our boots, dry and fine as talc. It coated the air so completely that even with respirators on, I could taste it bitter and metallic. Our lamps threw hard white cones that picked out rusted rail, broken timbers, and the occasional glint of old metal. A bolt, a can, a twisted tool left, where it fell the day everything went wrong. Water dripped somewhere far below, each drop amplified by the confined space, until it sounded like a metronome buried in the earth. Plunk, plunk, plunk. The sound echoed up through the shafts, folding back over itself until it was impossible to say exactly where it came from. We worked our way down through the levels, number 5, number 7, each one a honeycomb of headings and rooms, some collapsed, some still open. Our mapper walked, ahead, scanning, the machine on his back whining softly. Another guy logged readings, occasionally calling out roof measurements. I stayed near the back of the line, trying not to think about the thousands of tons of rock balanced above us. By the time we reached the mouth of level 9, the air had gone noticeably colder. Not just cooler, like getting closer to an air vent, but sharply cold, the kind that creeps through cloth and sinks into bone. My breath, trapped behind the respirator, still fogged my face shield at the edges. "That's just depth," the lead said when I mentioned it. His voice echoed off the coal, thinner than usual. "No sun down here, no surface heat. You get used to it." I wanted to believe that. I really did. The entrance to 9 was narrower than the earlier ones, more claustrophobic. Timber sets crouched low over the track, sagging under the weight of years. Somebody had painted a crooked 9 on the wall near the opening back when the mine was alive. The white paint had yellowed and flaked, but the numbers still showed, stubborn, like it refused to forget its own significance. Stepping through felt like crossing into a story I'd heard all my life without realizing it. 9 had been where most of the men died. The explosion had started further up and chased them through these entries, chewing oxygen, flame racing faster than men could run. Some made it as far as the main slope, many didn't. In the aftermath, the company sealed the level with concrete and excuses. The families sealed the rest in silence. The seal had been broken carefully for our work, cut through and shored up. On the far side, the dust lay thicker, undisturbed for decades. Our boots left the first prints since the last bodies were carried out. That thought landed hard when I noticed the others' footprints ahead of me and then mine joining them, like adding my name to a list I didn't entirely understand. 9 felt different. The drip of water seemed further away, like someone had turned down the volume on that particular sound. In its place was a kind of muffled hush, the way a room feels right after you step out of a crowded hallway. My lamp beam shook slightly with my breathing as I swept it along the walls. Narrow coal ribs, old chalk marks, the occasional orange iron stain like a rusted wound. We moved in deeper, spacing out to take readings. The lead called angles and distances. The mapper's scanner beeped in response. For a few minutes, it was all modern noise, electronics, boots, radio crackle. Then, under all that, I heard it. A faint tap. I almost missed it, tucked as it was into the rhythm of our work. But it came again. Tap, tap, a little pattern that didn't fit with any of our footsteps or gear. Light, metallic, like a small hammer striking steel in a careful, measured way. I stopped. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" the mapper said, not looking up. "Someone's knocking," I said before realizing how that sounded. The lead glanced back, lamp beam cutting across my face. "Rock moves," he said. "Timber shifts. Old rails ticking. Don't let it spook you." Logical. Sensible. I tried to fold myself into that explanation, but the taps came again, clearer now that I was listening for them. Ting, 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 ting. More deliberate than random. Our radios hissed softly, a low static under the lead's voice as he relayed readings back up to the surface tech. The sound made my skin crawl. There was something about static underground that felt wrong, like the mine itself was clearing its throat. We pushed deeper into 9, following the old track. That's when the humming started. It came up from the dark ahead, so faint at first I thought my brain was just filling silence. A low, monotone hum, too steady to be machinery, too human to be anything else. No words, no melody, just a sound like someone idly humming to themselves to pass the time. It echoed in the tight space, wrapping around the taps until it sounded like a distant shift still at work. Someone hammering in a roof bolt. Someone humming while they waited on a car. The hairs on my arms lifted under the coveralls. "You seriously don't hear that?" I asked louder this time. The mapper paused, listened. "I hear you breathing," he said. "And the scanner, that's it." The lead shook his head. "James, focus on your section, okay? We're on a clock." I swallowed whatever reply wanted to come out. The rational part of me said I was overlaying the stories I'd read about number 9 onto every sound. Mines are noisy places. Even dead mines have their own language. But the hum didn't fit any noise I'd heard, either in training or up top. It fit something much simpler. A man trying to keep himself calm in the dark. We came to a crosscut partially fallen in, a jumble of broken timbers, and rock blocking half the opening. Above the debris, my lamp caught a row of objects perched neatly along a ledge cut into the rib. Lunch pails. Old metal ones, the kind with domed tops and thermos clips. Some dented, some surprisingly intact under a skin of dust. They sat in a line like a row of tin soldiers, right where men had left them before going in to work their last shift. Beside them, a pair of boots lay on their sides, laces still threaded, tongues hanging out. One still held the faint shape of a foot, the leather stiffened around it. For a second, it felt like the miners could come back around the corner at any moment, cussing and laughing, ready to eat. The air around those pails felt thicker, like the dust there hadn't moved since someone set them down. I reached out without thinking, fingers hovering just shy of touching one. The cold radiating off the metal was wrong, deeper than room temperature, a chill that seemed to leach warmth from my skin even without contact. My breath fogged the lamp beam as I drew my hand back. Behind me, the tapping picked up, faster now, almost, impatient. Ting, ting, ting. The humming stretched higher for a moment, like whoever was making it had shifted posture. "James, you okay?" the lead called. "Yeah," I lied. "Just looking at something." We logged the crosscut, marked the fall, moved on. The noises came with us. Taps echoed ahead and behind, sometimes aligning with our steps, sometimes lagging just enough to feel like they belonged to someone else walking in near sync. The humming floated from side entries, then slipped away when my light probed the darkness. The deeper we went, the colder it got. Not gradually either. The temperature dropped in little cliffs, sudden pockets of cold that made the sweat on my neck freeze. My lamp beam would pass through one of those pockets and catch dust motes hanging strangely still, as if whatever air moved down here had to detour around invisible obstacles. At one point, the radios went from soft static to a sharp crackle. The lead tapped his ear, frowned, tried again. Surface, this is Team Alpha and 9. Read. Nothing but static answered, fuzzing in and out. Then, under it, a sound slipped through, soft like breath passing too close to the microphone. A faint murmur. I felt it more than heard it, the way you sometimes feel a bass note in your chest. 3 syllables, drawn out, distorted by distance and interference. Jammies. I froze. The others stepped a few paces before noticing I'd stopped. The lead turned, annoyance ready in his eyes, then froze too when he saw my face. "You all right?" he asked. "Someone just said my name on the radio," I whispered. He shook his head. "Nobody topside knows you personally. They barely remember my name." "It came through," I insisted just now, like a whisper. "James." "Probably feedback. You hearing your own echo," he said. "Mics can do weird things down here." Maybe that might have convinced me if the voice I'd heard had sounded anything like mine. We tried the radios again. This time, the line cleared. Surface Tech answered, complaining about brief interference from the equipment. "No," they said. They hadn't called us. "No, they hadn't said my name." The lead shrugged it off. I couldn't. After that, every little sound hit harder. A chunk of coal falling somewhere in the darkness made my heart jump. A distant creak in the roof had me checking the timbers above my head. The tapping grew more complex, almost like code now. Little bursts arranged just so. The humming stayed steady, an undercurrent that refused to be pinned down. Our scanner guy, usually unflappable, started glancing over his shoulder more. "Feels like we're walking into something," he muttered once, then shook his head like he didn't want to unpack that thought. We reached the planned turnaround point, a wide room where the seam had been worked hard, the roof higher than the entries. Old equipment sat rusting in place, a coal car tipped on its side, rails twisted like licorice, a section of conveyor half buried in rock. Here, the soundscape shifted again. For a moment, as we stepped in, everything stopped. No tapping, no humming. Even the distant water drip seemed to have moved away. Then faintly, a new layer slid in, the distant clink of metal on rock from all directions at once. Not loud, not close, but pervasive, like the mine had decided to fill itself with the ghosts of its own daily life. A shovel scraping, a pick tapping, something soft and rhythmic that could have been the drag of boots on the floor. "What are you getting on audio?" I asked, nodding toward the recorder I had clipped to my vest. "Same as you," the lead said. "Us talking. Our gear. That's it." I didn't argue. Instead, I quietly reached up and bumped the recorder's sensitivity, making sure it grabbed as much of the background as it could. If nothing else, I wanted proof later that this hadn't just lived in my head. We set up a couple of static scans in the room, leaving the equipment to spin and whine while we took a breather. Sitting down on an overturned coal car, I let my lamp wander over the floor. That's when I saw the handprint. Faint, in the coal dust. Larger than mine, fingers splayed, pressed down with enough force to leave a deeper impression. The edges were blurred, softened by time, or by air movement that hadn't been present until we walked in. It pointed toward the far wall where the coal seam ended in a jagged break. As I watched, a tiny trick of dust near the print stirred, as if a breeze had brushed over it. But I felt no air on my face. My mouth went dry. I don't know how long we sat there. Time gets strange when you're underground. Eventually, the lead called it. We had enough data for the day. No sense pushing deeper on the first run. We packed up the scanners, checked our lights and gear, and turned back toward the slope. That's when everything decided to converge. The tapping started again, closer now, echoing from behind us and ahead, impossible to locate. The humming swelled, branching into multiple tones like more than one person had joined in. My radio hissed, then cleared, then hissed again. "Let's move," the lead said, and there was a thread in his voice I hadn't heard before. We walked faster than was strictly safe, boots crunching in the dust. My lamp beam swung, catching the lunch pails again as we neared the crosscut. I couldn't help it. I looked up at them one more time. One of the lids was open now. I know it had been closed before. I would swear that under oath. Now it sat slightly askew, a dark gap showing where it had been sealed. No one on our team had gone near them while we were in the room. No one had the reason or the time. The temperature dropped like someone had opened a freezer. My breath fogged thick inside the mask, briefly blinding me. When it cleared, I stepped past the crosscut, heart pounding. "Don't stop," the mapper muttered. "Just don't stop." We were almost to the break back into the main slope when the radio on my shoulder crackled again. This time, there was no mistaking it. "Jamis." Soft, drawn out, the syllables dragging like they were pushing through heavy air. It didn't sound like me. It didn't sound like anyone I knew. There was a lilt to it, an accent I recognized from recordings of old miners, flat vowels, a hint of coal camp in the tone. I froze. So did everyone else. The lead's lamp swung toward me, eyes wide behind his shield. "Surface, did you just—" he started. The radio cut him off with a burst of static, followed by a sound so faint I might have imagined it. A low, tired sigh. Then, as if someone had closed a door, all the extra noises vanished. No tapping, no humming, just our breathing and the drip of water somewhere far below. "Out," the lead said quietly. "Now." We didn't argue. Climbing back up the main slope felt like moving from one world into another. With every level we passed, 7, 5, the air warmed a little, the dust seemed less oppressive. When daylight finally hit my eyes at the portal, it hurt, but I'd never been so grateful for it. The Forgotten Company town suddenly looked bright and harmless, its sagging houses almost friendly after the compressing dark. Back at the trailer, we downloaded the day's recordings. The lead and I sat shoulder to shoulder, headphones on, scrubbing through the audio from level 9. Voices came through crisp, ours, talking about readings and roof control. The scanner's whine, the rasp of boots, the occasional clink of gear, no tapping, no humming. We checked multiple files, multiple devices. Same result. Everything extra I remembered hearing was gone, until we hit the section near the crosscut on the way out. There, buried under a wash of static, something moved. We boosted the volume, filtered out the higher frequencies, pushed the low ones. Slowly, a shape of sound emerged, muddy but distinct enough to make the hairs on my arms lift. Jammies. My name, dragged through interference, but undeniably there. A second, quieter sound ghosted behind it, too soft to make out fully. Just the hint of a word that might have been stay, or wait, or down. The lead went pale. He scrubbed back, replayed it. Same thing. Once. No more. He pulled the headphones off, rubbed his face hard. "Could be bleed from another channel," he said, but it sounded like he was repeating something to convince himself. "Could be anything." "Could be me," I said, except I didn't say it. We didn't put that clip in the official report. On paper, number 9 was stable enough for continued survey work. The data we collected went off to offices where people would make models and maps and charts. Maybe they'll build something on that land someday. Maybe they'll leave it alone. As for me, I went back down there twice more. Each time the sounds came sooner, closer. The tapping started at the mouth of 9 instead of deep inside. The humming seemed to follow us, ducking in and out of side entries. The radios stayed mostly clean, except for the occasional soft breath brushing the edge of reception. I never heard my name again. Sometimes I wonder if that first whisper was a mistake. Like someone stuck in a loop of endless work had noticed, just for a second, that the pattern had been broken, that new footsteps had entered their world. Maybe they tried to reach out with the only thing they had left, the idea of a name carried on a dead network. Other nights, when sleep won't come, I picture a different scenario. I imagine a row of lunch pails, one lid slowly easing open, dust shifting as something pushes against a world it can't quite cross. I imagine a room full of men trapped in the last seconds of their shift, still swinging tools, still humming to themselves, unaware that time moved on without them. And I imagine that somewhere deep in the dark of 9, the mine has learned a new sound. My name, folded into the rhythm of its endless work. If you ever find yourself deep underground, in a sealed level, where no living person is supposed to be, and you hear your own name whispered back to you from the dark, remember this: the dead don't always know they're gone, but they might know you're there. If you found out your bedroom ceiling was painted to physically keep something out, would you still sleep under it? My name is Sophia, and in my family, paint was never just paint. It was warning, prayer, and contract all rolled into one thin, flaking layer overhead. When my grandmother died, nobody fought over the farmhouse. Nobody even pretended to want it. The house sat alone at the end of a rutted lane in Monroe County, West Virginia, the kind of place cell service forgot and Fogg remembered. The lawyer called it real property. But the way my mother's jaw tightened when he mentioned temporary occupancy made it clear. Whatever was sitting out there in the pasture and the trees and the old boards was also sitting in her memory, and she wasn't going back. I didn't have that history. To me, it was just Grandma's house, a place I associated with biscuits, quilts, and the smell of liniment. I said yes before I really thought about it. A few months of cheap solitude to get my head straight after a bad breakup sounded like a gift. The first thing I noticed when I pulled up was the blue. The house itself was tired. White clapboard, weathered to gray, metal roof rust-bit in places, chimney leaning a little like it needed a cane, but both the front and back porches still held that stubborn haint blue on their ceilings. It wasn't the fresh, Pinterest kind of blue. This was a washed-out, almost chalky color like sky remembered from a dream. In the cracks where the boards met, darker streaks hung, hinting at older coats underneath. I'd heard the folklore. Paint your porch ceiling blue to confuse spirits, make them think it's water or endless sky so they don't cross. Some folks said it kept wasps and mud daubers away too. Down here, people say haint, like it's just another critter you learn to live around. Apparently, my grandmother had believed enough to keep buying paint. Standing there with my overnight bag in hand, looking up at that faded sky, a thought I didn't like slid across my mind. What happens when the barrier starts to peel? Under the porch roof, the air felt a little cooler, even though it was late summer, and the heat lay over the field like a heavy blanket. A breath of wind came from nowhere and threaded past me, carrying a faint scent of something sweet and old-fashioned, powdery floral, like a perfume you'd expect in a glass bottle with a bold puff. It was the smell of my grandmother's hugs and church dresses. The porch swing creaked once, just a shift, as if someone had swung their legs and then changed their mind. I told myself it was settling wood and cross breezes and the ghost of spilled cologne. Then I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house had that specific old Appalachian quiet, the kind that feels layered. No electricity hum, no distant traffic, just the tick of a cooling stove somewhere and the occasional protest of old wood. Dust lay on surfaces in a thin, even coat disturbed, only where hands had touched things recently. There were still pictures on the walls, sepia faces in oval frames, my grandmother young and unsmiling, my mother as a little girl squinting at the sun. The floors were the first thing that bothered me. They were beautiful in a way, Wide, dark boards, worn smooth by decades of feet. In certain angles of light, they also showed other things. In the hallway, as the afternoon sun slanted low, I saw them. Faint, bare footprints, heel and 5 toes, slightly darker than the surrounding wood. They led from the front door toward the back of the house, then disappeared into a patch of shadow by the kitchen. If I stepped sideways, the prints seemed to vanish. If I lined up with them just right, they popped back into view. I tested it with my own socks off, placing my foot next to one. The size matched mine almost perfectly. I told myself it was oil stains from years of bare feet, lining up with the floor grain in a way my brain wanted to turn into shapes. I told myself a lot of things that day. I chose the bedroom at the back, the one my grandmother had used after she stopped climbing stairs. The ceiling there was just white, hairline cracks tracing out delicate maps. Over the bed hung a wooden cross and a framed verse my grandmother had loved, the script faded from sunlight. There was a door that led straight out to the back porch. When I opened it, I was standing under another stretch of that haint blue ceiling, this one even more faded, edges feathered by time. We keep it where the house touches the outside. I heard my grandmother's voice in my head, as clear as if she'd been standing beside me. That's where they look for cracks. Who they were, nobody had ever specified. The first night, I slept hard. The drive, the heat, the emotional weight of sorting through someone's life in boxes had knocked me out. At some point past midnight, though, I surfaced into a kind of half-wakefulness that felt too sharp to be a normal dream. It was the humming that pulled me up. Not from inside the room, from underneath it. The sound was faint, but once my ears locked onto it, I couldn't unhear it. A low, tuneless hum, like someone idly singing under their breath while they worked. It came up through the floorboards, a vibration more than a melody. There were no lyrics, just a steady human pitch that rose and fell slightly with each breath. I lay there, rigid, listening. The old farmhouse had a crawl space, not a basement. I'd seen the vent grills along the foundation. Nothing under there but dirt, spiders, and the occasional animal, I told myself earlier. Animals don't hum like that. After a minute, the sound shifted. The hum became slightly brighter, like lips had closed more. A tiny creak came from the direction of the back porch, wood moving under weight. My skin tightened, goosebumps racing up my arms. I told myself it was in my head. Grief, stress, old house noises. I rolled over, squeezed my eyes shut, and forced myself back down into sleep. The next morning, in full daylight, everything seemed ridiculous. Sunlight made the kitchen cheerful, turning the enamel sink and old formica counters benign. I convinced myself the footprints I'd seen were less distinct than they'd looked at dusk. I put on coffee, opened the back door, and stepped onto the porch with my mug. As I passed under the blue ceiling, something brushed the back of my head. Not wind. It was too localized. A tiny cold pressure tugged at a lock of hair at the nape of my neck, just enough to make me flinch. It felt exactly like the way someone might catch your hair between their fingers to get your attention, light and deliberate. I spun around. Nothing behind me but the open doorway and my own faint reflection in the glass. The porch swing was still. The air was still. The only movement came from a bird hopping along the fence post at the edge of the yard. I reached back and found a single strand of my hair pulled away from the rest, lifting slightly, as if it didn't quite want to lie back down yet. My heart thudded once, hard. "No," I said out loud to the empty porch. "We are not doing this." The house didn't answer. The blue ceiling stared down, cracked and serene. For the next few days, little things stacked up. Every time I walked under one of the blue-painted ceilings, front porch, back porch, that little enclosed side porch that led to the laundry room, I would feel it. A light tug at my hair, or a brief, cold brush along my scalp, like a fingertip tracing my hairline. Never enough to hurt. Never enough to be mistaken for anything but touch. At night, the humming came back. Always from underneath. It didn't happen constantly. Some nights the house just creaked inside. But on the ones where it did, it always started the same way. A faint vibration rising through the floorboards near the bed, resolving into a human hum, tuneless but steady. Sometimes, just as I was starting to drift, it would switch to a whispery kind of singing, like someone mouthing words without voice. The sound was too blurred to make out syllables, but the rhythm suggested lullabies, twisted into something else. On the third night, I sat up and swung my feet to the floor, half convinced as I could catch whatever it was in the act if I moved fast enough. The moment my soles touched the wood, the humming stopped. The silence that followed felt thick, listening. I grabbed a flashlight and went to the back door. The porch boards were cool under my bare feet. When I stepped under the blue ceiling, that now familiar little tug came at my hair, firmer this time, as if scolding. I ignored it, marched to the edge of the porch, and pointed the flashlight down through the gaps between the boards. All I saw was darkness, crumbly earth, and a few dead leaves. The beam cut across empty crawl space, stone foundation, spider webs. No rats scurrying, no stray cats, no hidden vagrant who decided this was a good place to camp. Just darkness, and the faintest trace of that old perfume, riding a thread of colder air. The next morning, I called my mother. "You moved in already?" she asked, like she was surprised I'd gone through with it. "Yeah," I said. "Did Grandma ever tell you why she kept the porches blue?" On the other end, there was a long pause. I could hear her exhale, a tiny hiss through her teeth. "That's just an old thing," she said finally. "Keeps bugs off. You know how she was. Superstitious." Did she ever say what it was supposed to keep out besides bugs? Another pause. A cupboard clicked shut in her kitchen. When she spoke again, her voice had acquired a careful lightness. "Your great-grandmother had words with someone," she said. "Way back before I was born. People called her a witch, but around here that can mean a woman who talks back and knows her herbs. There was an argument. Over land, over a baby, depends on who you ask. The other woman said our line would never sleep easy under their own roof again." I swallowed. "That's comforting." "She used to wake up screaming," my mother added quietly. "Your great-grandmother." Then my mother started painting the porches. Said if something wanted in, it'd have to come through the roof, and she wasn't going to make it easy. "You never had anything happen?" I asked. "I moved out as soon as I could," she said. "And I didn't sleep there alone after I was 15. That house doesn't like us relaxed." She tried to laugh. It came out thin. "If you're spooking yourself, just come stay with me a while, Soph. Let the lawyers deal with it. Sell it to some out-of-stater who thinks Haint Blue is cute." I told her I was fine, that I just wanted context. We hung up, and I stood in the kitchen staring at the back door, at the little band of blue visible through the glass at the top of the porch. That night, I paid attention. I lay in the dark and let the house talk. The normal sounds emerged first: distant coyotes yipping, an owl calling, the faint pop of timbers, cooling. Somewhere, a loose shutter tapped lazily. Hours passed in fits of shallow sleep. Then the humming rose. It came from directly under the bed this time, a low vibration that made the mattress feel like it was breathing. The hum sounded closer than ever, like whoever was making it had pressed their face right up against the underside of the floor, humming straight into the wood. I couldn't move. Not because something held me, but because fear rooted me in place. My pulse thudded in my throat, matching the rise and fall of that wordless song. Very slowly, I slid my hand up to the headboard and tightened my fingers around the flashlight I'd hidden there hours earlier. When the humming took a breath, just one fraction of a pause, I rolled out of bed, hit the switch, and shone the beam straight down at the floorboards. The sound cut off. In the flashlight's circle, the wood looked ordinary, a little scratched, a little dull. But as I watched, a single knot in one of the boards near the center of the room darkened, like moisture had seeped up from below. The shape that spread around it was unmistakable, the faint outline of a bare foot, toes spilling into visibility one by one. This one wasn't some old stain aligning with light. It was appearing. Fresh. The edges soft, as if someone had just stepped there and was slowly sinking away. My mouth went dry. The air felt suddenly crowded, like someone else was standing in the room with me, just outside the flashlight's beam. From the hallway, I heard the soft creak of the floor near the front door, then one near the kitchen, then a sigh of movement on the back porch, the sound of the swing shifting, chains rasping in the still air. Whatever walked in this house was making a circuit. It did not care that I was watching. I backed up until my shoulders hit the wall. The faint perfume scent rolled over me again, stronger, threaded now with something colder, metallic and damp, like stone after rain. Without really deciding to, I spoke. "If this is your house," I said, voice shaking, "I'm just here for a little while. I'm your blood. I'm not here to take anything from you. Just let me sleep." The house didn't answer, but the newly formed footprint faded slowly, the wood brightening back to its usual shade. The creaks in the hallway stilled, one by one. I didn't sleep again that night, but nothing else moved where I could see it. The next day, I stood in town outside the little hardware store, staring at the paint rack. The man behind the counter asked if I needed help. I opened my mouth to say, "white ceiling paint," then heard my grandmother's voice in my head again. "We keep the blue where the house touches the outside. That's where they press." "Do you have haint blue?" I asked instead. He smiled like he heard that question every week. "Got just the thing," he said, pulling down a can with a color swatch the exact shade of clouded sky. That afternoon, I dragged a ladder into the back bedroom and painted the ceiling while late light slanted in through the window. I watched the brushstrokes transform the cracked white into a thin skin of blue. My arms ached, my neck protested. By the time I finished, dots of paint speckled my hair and hands. When it dried, the room felt different. Not safer exactly, but contained, like I'd added one more hinge to a door that had wanted to swing wide. That night, under that newly painted ceiling, the humming stayed faint and far away. I felt something brush my hair only once as I stepped from the bedroom into the back porch. A light, almost affectionate tug, like a hand checking a lock. It never wholly stopped. Some nights I still heard the shift of weight on the floor, the creak of the swing, the faint scent of that old perfume threading through a cold draft. I woke more than once to see those barefoot prints faintly marking the hallway, toes pointed toward my bedroom door, fading as the first light of morning pushed into the boards. But the thing that lived in the seams of this house didn't cross the blue. I didn't sleep easy, exactly, but I slept. When I finally left, papers signed, keys handed over to a young couple from out of state who loved the character of the place, I didn't tell them to keep the paint fresh. The words stuck in my throat and stayed there. Maybe that was selfish. Maybe I told myself they weren't linked to the curse, that whatever haunted the house didn't care about their blood. On my last night, I stood in the front yard and looked back. The porch light I'd replaced cast a soft glow under the blue ceiling, turning the peeling paint into the illusion of shallow water. The swing moved once, chains whispering. A cold draft slipped past me carrying that same whisper of perfume. It circled for a second, then brushed my hair back from my face in one light, familiar touch. "All right," I said quietly. "You win. I get it." The touch withdrew. The night settled. I still don't know if the witch's curse was real or just a story that grew teeth over generations. I don't know if the thing that hummed under the floor was some ancestor restless in their rest, or something older that had just attached itself to our particular branch of the family tree. I do know this. Paint doesn't stop time. It flakes. It peels. It forgets. But sometimes, when you sleep under the right color long enough, something on the other side remembers you, and, for reasons you might never understand, chooses to leave you alone. Some voices sound like family in the dark, the ones that use your full legal name, the one from birth certificates and gravestones, to lure you into a blizzard, are something else entirely. My name is Mia, and that winter on the North Carolina ridge, grief didn't just visit me in the trailer. It walked the roof, pressed against the walls, and spoke through the vents until I couldn't tell where my memories ended and the storm began. The trailer squatted on cinder blocks at the knife edge of the mountain, 30 feet of thin aluminum and fake wood paneling that shook like it wanted to dance every time the wind remembered it was there. I'd rented the spot for cheap because it had a view, valleys unrolling below like rumpled quilts on clear days, and because after Dad's accident and the friend who'd gone off the road last spring, I needed somewhere the world felt far away. The ridge dropped steep on both sides, pines clawing the rock, no neighbors close enough to borrow sugar or ask questions. Storm warnings had crackled on the little radio all day. Whiteout conditions. Travel not advised. Stay indoors. By evening, snow came horizontal, wet flakes slapping the windows, piling against the skirt until the trailer's belly groaned. I watched from the kitchenette as the yard light down the slope winked out. Then the distant valley glow faded to nothing. Power snapped off at 10:43 p.m., the fridge humming to silence, the single bulb over the sink dying mid-flicker. Propane heater kicked in on backup, blue flame hissing under the grate, but the fan quit without electricity. Cold seeped up from the floor vents first, then clawed down from the metal roof. I layered up, sweats, flannel, Dad's old wool coat, and set battery lanterns on the counter and dinette. Their white light washed everything sterile, shadows pooling in the corners like spilled ink. The neighbor's dog usually yapped at shadows till midnight. Tonight, nothing. No coyotes, no wind-whipped branches cracking, just the muffled roar of snow against siding and the trailer's thin walls flexing with each gust. First wrong sound was a footstep on the roof. Crisp, deliberate. Thud above the kitchenette, metal denting slightly underweight. Snow slid in a small avalanche off the edge. I froze with tea mug, halfway to my lips, steam curling dead in the chill air. Raccoon, brain supplied. Deer jumping from a gust, standard ridge nonsense. Second step came measured, heel to toe, crossing toward the bedroom end. Roof joists creaked, human weight, testing balance. Pause at the peak, then back the other way, pacing. I killed the stove flame to listen. Heater hissed on, propane blue flickering shadows across the propane tank gauge outside the frost-rimed window. Half full, good for another day if I nursed it. Steps circled overhead, slow laps like something mapping the layout from above. No claws scrabbling, no animal panic, just steady, curious tread. Go find shelter, I whispered to the ceiling. Voice swallowed by wind. Steps stopped dead center, right over the bed. Long pause, then one final heavy shift, testing the thin metal inches from where I'd sleep, and silence. I told myself, animal, exhaustion, wind playing tricks. Grabbed the .22 from the closet, Dad's old varmint rifle loaded with shorts, and propped it by the bed, curled under 3 blankets, coat collar up, listening to cold thicken the air. Heater sputtered at 1:17 a.m., flame yellowing weak. Pipes ticked as water froze in the lines. Battery lanterns dimmed to 60%. Frost spidered the windows, turning night into milk glass. Voice came from the front door. Mia Elizabeth. Full legal middle name dragged slow, vowels thick with mountain gravel. Dad's voice exactly. Cigarette rasp from 40 years underground, the way he'd call me in from the yard at dusk. Heart slammed. For one gut punch second, impossible hope flared. He'd driven up, beat the storm, come to check on me. Brain flashed him stomping snow off boots, filling the trailer with his bulk and that half grin. Mia Elizabeth Carter. Doors stuck. Let me in. It's freezing. Full name again. Legal one from his will. The one he never used casual, only for scoldings or forms. He'd always said, Mia girl, or nothing at all. Door handle rattled light. Metal groaned under gloved fist. Fist with intent. You're dead, I whispered. Rifle stock cold against palm. Laughter outside, low rumble muffled by snow. Storm's bad. Come help your old man. Door rattled harder. Not banging, persistent like someone clearing ice with a tool. Wind howled cover, but cadence matched Dad's patient knock from my childhood. Grief clawed up, hot and stupid. What if hallucination? Isolation fever dream. But voice nailed every inflection, every pause where he'd hawk phlegm. Steps retreated crunching snow, relief flooded, chased by new fear. What if it circled? Mother's voice hit from the side window, 2:14 a.m. Sweetheart, heater out? Softer tone, church Sunday warmth, vowels smooth from years, city living after Dad. She'd call every Sunday, voice tinny on bad connection. Mia Elizabeth, honey, let Mama in, roads are gone. Full name again, document perfect. She'd used nicknames only, Bug, Toots, never the formal string. Window glass creaked under pressure. Dark shape blotted frost pattern, tall, narrow silhouette, humanish, but too still. Heater flame guttered low, blue to yellow. You're in Florida, I said louder. Rifle sighted blurry on glass, voice sighed patient. Came when I heard, open up, we'll wait it out. Shape shifted, pressed closer. Breath fogged pain inside out. No frost melted patch shaped like open mouth. Friend's voice joined from roof vent 3:22 a.m. Mia, dude, let me down. Voice from the wreck last spring. Cocky drawl, laugh under words. We'd hiked this ridge, shared beers, talked futures before his truck spun on ice. Mia Elizabeth Carter, freezing my ass off, throw a rope or something. Full name. Casual now, like joke. He'd called me M or Carter or nothing. Vent rattled, metal flexing. Shape dropped from window to door in heavy slide, snow whooshing. All three layered at once, 4:06 a.m., heater dead silent. Mia Elizabeth Carter. Door, window, roof. Triad voices braided, harmony off-key. Full legal name chanted blizzard psalm. Open, open, open. Rifle trembled. Cold numbed trigger finger. Dark shapes pressed every glass. Three tall figures, featureless, snow-cloaked, patient silhouettes ringing trailer. Grief screamed open door, embrace them. Rationality bolted every latch, taped seams. Entity knew deaths, names, voices, wanted me outside, joining. Go away, I yelled. Voice cracked, shape stilled, wind only sound. Lanterns flickered, 12%. Silence stretched, shapes faded into whiteout. Footsteps circled once more, deliberate lapse mapping defeat. Morning plow growled distant. Neighbor pounded real fist, shapes gone, never heard them again. Sold trailer spring, some griefs pace roofs. Some know full names from unseen lists. Keep doors locked. You think the woods belong to you until the branches start whispering that they've always belonged to someone else. And those someones have been watching you unpack your tent since before you lit the fire. My name is Charlotte, and the day we decided to bushwhack that unmarked ridge on the Tennessee-North Carolina line, I thought we were claiming adventure. What we found was a place that had been claimed long before maps or trails, or any of us were born. The border between Tennessee and North Carolina runs crooked through the Appalachians, a line drawn by men who never saw most of it. Some ridges don't even have names, just numbers on topo sheets, or gaps locals avoid talking about. We'd heard about this one from a gas station guy in Hot Springs. Steep son of a bitch, untouched, no trails, bears like it quiet. That was all the bait we needed. 3 of us, me, one friend from college, another from high school, loaded packs with enough for 2 nights, and aimed for what the GPS called Ridge 4721, a knife-edge hump that didn't show on All Trails or Gaia, or any app worth a damn. We parked at a pull-off where the forest road gave up, threw on packs heavy with optimism, and started climbing. Bushwhacking isn't hiking, it's fighting. Laurel hells that grab your pants, rhododendron tunnels too thick to see 5 feet, loose scree that slides under boots and fills your socks with grit. By noon we were soaked in sweat, scratched raw, but the ridge ahead sharpened into view. a narrow spine of rock and stunted trees marching into cloud like it didn't care who saw it. The first bone hung from a sourwood limb about 100 yards in. It caught the light wrong, long, pale, curved like a jaw missing teeth, wrapped loosely in faded red yarn that fluttered when we stopped. The friend ahead of me froze, pack half off. "Deer mandible," he said, voice too casual. "Predator kill. Happens." I nodded, but the yarn bothered me. Not natural. Someone tied it there. 5 minutes later, another. Smaller bone, bird-sized, lashed between forked twigs with sinew. Below it, bark peeled back to show a crude carving. Stick figures, 3 of them, arms raised, surrounding a larger shape with antlers or horns. The cuts were fresh enough that sap still beaded along the lines. "Trail art," the other friend said, snapping a picture. "Locals marking territory." We kept climbing. The bones got more deliberate. Rib cages stripped clean, vertebrae strung like beads. A full deer skull grinning from crotch-level branches. Talismans appeared, corn husks twisted into dolls, feathers glued with pine pitch, stones drilled and hung with human hair still attached. The air smelled sharper, smoke and wet earth and something musky underneath, like animal but layered with sweat. By late afternoon, we topped the ridge proper, a catwalk of fractured shale between sheer drops. The view punched the breath out. North Carolina Valley to the left, Tennessee hollows to the right, unbroken green ocean, all the way to horizon haze. Perfect camp spot. Flat enough for tents, trickle of spring water in a cleft, enough deadfall for fire without denuding the place. We dropped packs, high-fived, cracked beers from the cooler. "Untouch my ass," college friend said, kicking shale. "Place is curated." High school friend found the first fire pit while gathering wood. Shallow depression ringed with stones, ash still faintly warm to the touch. No charring on nearby trees, no trash, no sign of recent humans. "Hunters," I said. "Bow season." We built our own fire bigger, flames snapping orange against gathering dusk. Tents went up fast, mine red, theirs blue and green. Dinner was chilly from packets, instant coffee, stories about exes, and dumb college pranks. Twilight thickened fast in mountains. Stars punched through by full dark. That's when the watching started. Not a feeling at first. A sound. Low rustle downslope left, like feet on dry leaves. Wind, I thought. Deadfall shifting. Then upslope right. Same rustle, closer, deliberate. Branches clacked softly. Our bone charms swaying in rhythm. "Wind's picking up," college friend said, feeding the fire. High school friend shone his headlamp downslope. Nothing. Clear shot to the valley. Russell circled behind us, uphill now. Distinct. Bare feet patting loose rock, quick and light. Multiple sets. Too coordinated for deer, too quiet for bear. I stood, sweat my light 360. Black wall of trees both sides, drop-offs front and back. Bone charms clicked like wind chimes. "Animals," I said. Russell paused. Dead quiet except fire crackle and our breathing. Then laughter. Breathy, muffled, overlapping giggles that started low and spread upslope. Childlike but wrong. Too throaty, laced with wet clicks like someone chewing gristle. Not one voice, several. Moving position while laughing. College friend grabbed a burning branch from the fire. "Who's there?" growls answered. Deep, rolling from multiple throats, echoing off rock faces. Not animal threat growls. These had human cadence, warning laced with amusement. High school friend, packed sleeping bag one-handed, light shaking. "We should bail. Ground's flat enough to tent lower." "Downhill and dark," college friend snapped. "Break an ankle, then what?" Growls circled wider. Bare feet slapped shale now, dozens, some scampering high, some low. Laughter bubbled underneath, stifled snickers. Bone charms clacked faster. Wind direction wrong. Fire popped, sending sparks upslope. Shapes flickered in periphery. Low, hunched silhouettes ducking branch to branch. Too fast for moonglow reflection. Too purposeful. "Get intense," I said. Zippers rasped. We dove inside, lights off peeking through mesh. Firelight dimmed, coals glowing dull. Footsteps ringed camp tight, pausing at our packs, sniffing audible. Low murmurs, wordless chatter, syllables popping like wet wood. Talons scraped tent stakes, testing tension. Breath fogged nylon inches from my face. Hours crawled. Footfalls never stopped. Circling, probing, waiting. Laughter faded to heavy breathing. Fire died to embers. Dawn grayed east. We unzipped slow. Camp untouched but wrong. Stakes loosened. Guy lines retied slacker. Chili packets ripped open. Contents licked clean. Coolers dragged 10 feet. Lids popped. Looked up. 30 feet vertical. Sheer rock face we'd eyed yesterday. Unclimbable wet. Dicey dry. Perfect charcoal sketches covered it. 3 tents exact. Red, yellow, blue, green. Stakes and guy lines precise. Occupants sketched inside. 3 matchstick figures. Faces blank white smudges. Arms raised like previous carvings. Sketches fresh. Charcoal smudged fingers. No ropes. No chalk dust below. Someone climbed sheer cliff blind in storm dark. Sketched from memory by firelight. Descended silent. No discussion. Packs on backs. Downhill fast as footing allowed. Footsteps paced parallel through trees. Never showing. Always matching speed. Bone charms clacked farewell. Hit parking lot shaking. Drove separate ways. Never camped off trail again. Ridge still there. Drawings probably faded. Watching eyes don't. If a wilderness feels too easy to claim, ask what claimed it first. If you stand under a sky that keeps choosing the same grave over and over, after a while, you stop believing in coincidence. You start wondering what that grave is doing to the sky. My name is Daniel, and the only reason I pulled off that back road the first time was because the storm looked too perfect not to chase. South Carolina's side of the Blue Ridge doesn't get the big cinematic plane supercells. Out here, thunderstorms sneak up around ridges, roll down hollows, and then detonate with no warning over old farms and older churches. We'd been following one of those messy radar blobs for an hour, 3 of us in my beat-up sedan, climbing and dropping through curves until bars vanished from our phones, and the only forecast we had was the smell in the air. You learn it if you spend enough summers watching weather. That metallic, wet stone scent that means the sky is about to split. I saw the church before the first thunder hit. It crouched just off the gravel road at a bend, half swallowed by kudzu and briars. Not the tall white steeple kind you see on postcards. This had once been stone and brick, now mostly ruin. 3 walls still stood, roof long gone, windows empty arches framing gray cloud. A twisted oak leaned over one corner, branches like arthritic fingers resting on the cracked masonry. "Look at that," the friend in the passenger seat said, pressing his hand to the glass. The storm chose that moment to drop its first bolt. Lightning came down so close, the flash bleached the world white. Every leaf and raindrop hard cut for a split second. The thunder followed almost on top of it, a gut-punch crack that rattled the steering wheel in my hands. In that instant of clarity, I saw the bolt hit. Not the church walls, not the oak, but a single headstone in the small fenced cemetery beside the ruin. The stone glowed around the edges, a halo of sudden steam where rain hit superheated rock. I pulled over without deciding to, tires hissing on wet gravel. The others spilled out into the rain with whoops that sounded braver than they were. The place felt wrong from the ditch up. Grass grew uneven, thick, and chest-high in some places, bare earth in others where nothing but moss had bothered to live. The church itself still held a ghost of its shape. Front steps half buried, doorless entrance yawning dark. Ivy and kudzu had climbed the walls and then died back in weird strips, like something hot had rolled across them. The cemetery hugged one side, maybe 15 graves in 2 ragged rows. Most stones slumped, names worn lichen pale. One grave, near the center, was different. Nothing grew on that patch of ground. No grass, no moss, Not even the skinny opportunist weeds that usually find a way in forgotten plots. Just dry, cracked dirt in a neat rectangle, like someone had recently peeled turf away and left it to bake. At the head of that barren strip stood the lightning-struck stone, shorter than the others, its top edge blackened and chipped. Another bolt cracked out of the cloud, snapping the sky in half. It arced down and hit that same stone dead on. We flinched back as a cone of white exploded around it, thunder landing like a physical shove. Ozone and scorched wet earth punched the air. Twice in a row, my friend muttered. What are the odds? Rain sheeted sideways now. We huddled near the broken church wall, as if its three sides made any real shelter. The twisted oak above us creaked but held. Wind rounded the corner of the ruin and seemed to falter, like it hit resistance around that bare grave. The rest of the cemetery grass whipped back and forth. Over the empty patch, droplets just circled. That's not right, the other friend said, voice too high. Maybe there's metal under it, I said. Rebar, old fence post. He snorted. Who buries rebar under a grave? Another flash. Again the bolt sought the same stone, as if aimed. Edges of the headstone glowed dull red for a heartbeat. Steam poured up in a quick twisting column that smelled like hot clay and something older, like open cellars and wet stone that's never seen daylight. I realized I was stepping closer, even as every sane part of my brain yelled at me to back off. The draw of it felt physical, like standing next to a loudspeaker and feeling your ribs hum along. Most of the headstone's face was hidden under a thick coat of moss and lichen, wet now, dark green gloss in the rain. Where the lightning had chewed the top edge, fresh stone showed through, pale, almost white. Any name that had been there was lost under growth. You're not really going to touch that, are you? One of them said behind me. I didn't answer. Curiosity can be a curse all by itself. The air around the stone was colder by several degrees. Not the general chill of storm wind. This had a clear boundary. One step, humid southern summer. Next step, cool cellar. A small swirling gust chased itself, in circles ankle-high over the naked dirt, twirling leaves that somehow never landed on it. I reached out with 2 fingers, intending only to brush the edge, maybe flake away a bit of moss. The instant my skin met stone, sensation vanished. It wasn't like touching ice. Ice burns. You feel the pain even as nerves scream. This was absence, an absolute negation of temperature. My fingers went from wet and warm to nothing at all, as if I'd dipped them into a void. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. No rain, no thunder, no breath. My vision tunneled until all I could see was pale stone under dark green, the arc of scorched top, gravel of carved letters buried. Then sound slammed back, thunder overhead, wind keening around the ruins, my friend swearing close to my ear. I yanked my hand away. Color came back in a rush, tingling up my arm like my whole limb had fallen asleep and then been stabbed awake. You okay? Someone shouted. My brain took a second to assign the voice. Fine, I lied. My fingers weren't responding quite right. They curled and uncurled slow, stiff, leaving watery prints on my jeans when I wiped them. I tried to see the name through the moss in the next flash of lightning. All I got was a hint of shape, bare grooves where letters had once been carved, now filled, eroded, blurred. When the thunder rolled, a softer second echo answered from directly behind me, inside the church ruin. Not a building echo, the kind that repeats words in a diminishing pattern. This was delayed, lower in pitch, like something in the empty nave had also been struck and was taking its time reacting. Did you hear that? I called. Hear what? One of them said. Besides the sky trying to kill us? Another bolt, same stone, same whiteout flash. In that frozen instant, I thought I saw something like a handprint flare on the headstone's face. 5 pale shapes under the moss, same size as my own fingers. We bailed then, stumbling back to the car, laughing too loud. That brittle kind of shaky. The storm chased us down the mountain, hurling rain at the windshield so thick the wipers were useless. By the time we hit lower ground, the worst of it had passed. The sky merely grumbled as we split up at the highway, each heading our own way home. That night, lying in my dark bedroom, with the fan ticking overhead and rain still dripping from the gutters outside, I played the memory back in loops. The way the stone had drunk my warmth without giving anything back. The way the bare earth around it refused even weeds. The way every strike had found it with near-perfect aim, like metal to magnet. Lightning likes the highest point, the easiest path. That little stone had been neither. I slept eventually. You always do. The first time the grave appeared, I thought it was just leftover imagination riding my dreams. Thunder woke me sometime past midnight, distant at first, then closer. Light curled around the edges of my curtains, flickering as another cell moved across the county. The room flashed bright for a second. The particular blue-white of lightning filtered through rain. In that flash, for a clean, absolute instant, there was a rectangle of lighter darkness in the far corner of the room, waist-high, narrow, proportioned exactly like a headstone, bare patch of shadow, ground, in front of it, darker than my hardwood floor, then darkness again. I sat up, pulse suddenly a fist in my throat. Guided by habit, my eyes went to the digital alarm clock. Blank. Power out again. The fan had fallen silent. Only the clock on my phone, face down on the nightstand, could have told me the time, but I didn't reach for it. My hand felt slow, muffled, the same way it had around the grave. Another flash, longer this time. The corner lit up, washed out gray. The wall, the hanging jacket on the hook, the bookshelf, no stone, no bare earth. Just my room, unchanged. I smiled without meaning it. You're jumpy, I told myself. Next, flash came with thunder right on top of it, close enough to buzz in my teeth. In that half-second of day-bright light, the corner showed the grave again. No detail, just shape. But it leaned in the same tiny way, as if subsiding into soft soil. It took up exactly the space between my laundry basket and the wall, displacing the pile of clothes that should have been visible in that corner. Thunder boomed outside. Inside, a fainter echo followed a heartbeat later, not from the sky but from the direction of my closet. I didn't sleep much longer that night. Over the next weeks, the pattern set. Storms rolled through a lot that summer. Some I slept through, some I watched from the porch, counting beats between flash and rumble. Every time one caught me in my room with the lights off, at least one lightning flicker would show the grave in the corner. Never in every flash, only some. Enough to keep my brain cranked. One time it appeared closer, no longer hugging the far wall but nudged in by inches, as if the earth around it had shifted. My laundry basket sat partially behind it in that frame. Impossible geometry for a room that hadn't changed. The next flash showed everything normal again. I might have written it off as some kind of lingering visual imprint, if not for what happened with my hand. The fingers that had touched the headstone never fully warmed up afterward. On the hottest days, when the rest of me sweated through my shirt, that hand would stay just a notch cooler, like I dipped it in spring water minutes ago. Fine most of the time. But during storms, the difference sharpened. Tingling up the forearm. A faint ache in the knuckles, like something low pressure was moving through bone. Once, on a dare to myself, I held that hand up when the grave flickered in the corner. For the span of that flash, my fingers looked wrong. Not shape, still mine. But the light slid over them different, shadows falling like they were carved deeper. For a heartbeat, I saw the faint suggestion of lines crossing my skin in ways that didn't match my veins or wrinkles, as if someone had drawn 5 pale grooves over each finger, angled inward, like the reversed imprint of a hand that had been holding on from the other side. I stopped storm chasing after that. It felt like walking around with a radio tuned to a frequency I didn't want to hear anymore. My friends joked that I'd gone soft. I lied and said work was busy. That night shifts made it hard. The truth was simpler. Every time the air got that metallic chill, every time clouds stacked blue-black over the ridge, I imagined that lifeless stone pulling invisible lines from the sky straight to my little rented house. The grave only ever showed if I was home. I tested that. Once, when a line of storms looked bad enough to spawn news alerts, I drove to a 24-hour diner in town and nursed coffee for hours, watching the rain scrub the parking lot. Friends texted videos of lightning from their porches. My place might have been getting hammered, but I didn't see the grave that night. I slept stiff and sticky in my car afterward, rain drumming the roof, dreamless for the first time in weeks. When I finally drove back the next morning, my house stood where I'd left it. No charred patch in the yard, no shattered windows. Inside, one weird detail. The corner where the grave liked to appear smelled faintly of wet stone and something like old tobacco. That sweet, stale scent church basements sometimes have. Storms in fall are different, colder, meaner. The last one before the leaves turned came with sideways rain and wind that made the siding moan. I'd been telling myself the grave thing was fading. It hadn't shown in a couple minor thunderstorms. Maybe whatever weirdness I'd dragged home from that ruin had lost its grip. That night proved me wrong. Lightning woke me with a flash so bright it painted my eyelids. The crack on its heels shook the frame, a picture on the opposite wall tilting a little. My hand, already too cold, felt like it had been plunged into snow. I swore under my breath and rolled onto my back, eyes on the ceiling. Flash. The grave was there, not in the corner this time, but at the foot of my bed. Thunder followed, then the quieter rumble from somewhere near my chest of drawers. The stone's top edge looked freshly chipped in that light. The air around it seemed to waver, heat ripple in reverse. I didn't move. Every childhood rule about not dangling limbs over the mattress edge came roaring back. The shape vanished with the dark, but the impression of it stayed stamped behind my eyes. Flash. Closer. No space now between the end of the mattress and that bare rectangle of knot floor. If there had been real dirt there, it would have been touching the sheets. I could see, just for a blink, that the ground in front of it wasn't my hardwood. Texture looked wrong, crumbly, pitted, like the patch in the cemetery. The smell hit then. Hot stone, clay, the ghost of wet moss. A draft snuck up from that direction, cold enough to make my teeth clack. It carried another scent underneath, old wood and candle wax, the way the ruined church might have smelled when it still had walls and sermons. Thunder rolled again. Under it, a much softer sound. A dry, almost polite knock somewhere inside the room. Not at the door, but at a surface with more give. The underside of the bed. My touched hand spasmed. For a moment, I felt the headstone under my fingers again, and with it came a pressure, not just cold, but intent. A sense of being measured, weighed, noted. I thought of what graves are supposed to do. Hold names, fix them to dates, pin a person to a place, even after everything else about them has scattered. That stone back at the church had refused. It took my touch, but it didn't give up its own name. It took lightning, over and over, without splintering. It sat on dead earth and would not host so much as moss, unless it chose the moment. Now, in my room, with that invisible pressure testing the edge of my mattress, a stupid thought surfaced. Maybe it wanted a name badly enough to trade. I did the one thing I hadn't done since the pattern started. I spoke. "You can have mine," I whispered. Instantly, the cold shot up my arm, collarbone, the side of my neck like frost racing along a wire. My own name rang in my head like a struck bell, first, middle, last, in a voice I didn't recognize but somehow believed. Daniel Hayes. The syllables echoed not just between my ears but in the air, doubling. One from outside, muffled by wall, one from inside, vibrating in bone. For a pulsing second, the grave at the foot of the bed showed clearer than ever, edges sharp, surface not blank but carved. Moss peeled back in fast motion, retreating from letters deep and clean. I saw the D before. The dark took it. Not mine. The shape old-fashioned, serifed, belonging to another language of stone. Thunder crashed so hard it felt like the sky had dropped. The light bulb in the lamp by my bed exploded with a pop. Glass pattered onto the nightstand. I threw my forearm over my face on reflex. When silence finally fell, rain softened to a steady tap. My heart still trying to punch through my ribs. The air felt ordinary. Room temperature. Heavy with the smell of ozone and a faint scorch from the blown bulb, but normal. The grave, when the lingering after-images cleared, was gone. Days went by. Storms came and went, weaker now as the season shifted. I watched a few from the porch, counting gaps between flash and rumble, my body braced for the now familiar chill, the corner apparitions. Nothing came. My hand warmed up, not all at once, but over a week or so. The ache in the knuckles faded. The weird grooves I'd thought I'd seen in that one flash never appeared again. On the hottest afternoon in October, sweating under too many layers, because I hadn't believed the forecast, my fingers felt like the rest of me. Unremarkable. Living. I haven't gone back to the church. I looked for it once, on satellite maps. I found old Sheldon and other ruins the tourists snap pictures of, but not that nameless hump of stone at the Blue Ridge's feet. Roads in that area tangle, double back, turn from pavement to gravel without warning. Maybe we followed a logging spur that's grown over now. Maybe the place doesn't like being found twice. Sometimes I think I see a shape at the edge of my vision when a storm's on the horizon, a lighter patch of shadow in a field, a barer rectangle of soil in a roadside graveyard. It never quite resolves when I turn my head. The lightning goes where it wants, and I don't watch as closely as I used to. If a grave can refuse to carry a name long enough, maybe it looks for another way to anchor itself. Maybe it offers you a trade, your warmth for its chill, your clean record for its charred edges, your home corner for its patch of barren earth. Or maybe touching old stone in bad weather just burrows into your head and sits there, waiting for each flash to sketch itself again. Either way, if you ever find yourself under cracked church walls with thunder stacked over the Blue Ridge and you see a headstone that the sky seems to prefer, take this much from me. You don't need to know what's carved under the moss. You really don't need to feel how cold it is. And whatever you do, don't offer it your name. Thin floors betray more than you think. They carry vibrations from below that match your every step until you wonder who's really keeping time. My name is Riley, and the trailer park on the edge of that nameless Appalachian town had a way of making every night feel like it was waiting for you. Mine sat on the corner lot under a single crooked elm, its skirting warped from years of flood and frost, the crawl space underneath exhaling a steady breath of damp earth and faint sewage whenever the wind shifted just right. I'd taken the night shift at the warehouse because days paid shit, and nights paid enough to cover the lot, rent plus gas. Home by 6:45 a.m. most mornings, easing the truck past the sodium streetlights that bled orange through every blind in the park, past the chained dog that used to bark until his chain snapped taut. First week, he still did. By week 3, he'd gone quiet, just staring at the black gap under my trailer, with his ears flat and eyes wide, like he was waiting for permission to look away. The scratching started subtle. Coming up the cinder block steps, 2 stacked, uneven, sinking a little into the mud, I'd hear it. Slow drag across gravel. Then 4 deliberate scrapes, pause, repeat. Raccoon, I figured. Stray cat family. Plenty of both in the park. I stomped once, hard. The sound stopped cold, then picked up again when I unlocked the door. Exact same rhythm. Week 2, it got personal. I'd pause on the top step to fish keys from my pocket or silence my phone. Same tinny ringtone since the flip phone days. Beat, beat, pause, beat, beat. The scratching would pause too. Exactly. When I'd shuffle left to avoid the soft spot in the porch plywood, the drag shifted left under the floor. When I'd lean on the right cinder block, heavier thuds answered from directly below. Neighborhood dogs started gathering, not barking, staring. The chained mutt, the pit mix 3 lots down, even the mangy shepherd that roamed free. They'd line up at dawn, all facing the same point. The seam where my skirting met the ground near the porch. Eyes locked, tails still, like they were attending a lecture they didn't want to hear. I knelt one morning, pried up a loose skirting panel. Smell hit first, wet soil heavy with iron, like blood mixed into clay. Flashlight beam caught nothing but pierced plastic vapor barrier, puddles reflecting back my face, a few beer cans from past tenants. No eyes glowing, no fur, no nests, just the faint vibration under my palm, steady as a pulse. "Go find a farm," I muttered, dropping the panel. The dogs didn't blink. By week 4, it knew my ringtone. Phone buzzed at 6:42, same shift end alert. I hit the top step. Underneath, beat, beat, pause, beat, beat, thudding the joists in perfect sync. Not claws, too blunt, like palms slapping plywood, or heels testing floorboards from below. Stopped when I silenced it. Resumed when I played a voicemail. Learned the voicemail skip beep pattern in 2 nights. I called maintenance. Landlady's guy crawled under with a headlamp and crowbar, emerged sweating, smelling worse than the crawl space. "Nothing living," he said. Vapor barrier torn in strips like something clawed systematic. Support beams scored. 4 parallel marks fresh. Ground shifting funny under the tongue weight. "You got heavy boots?" "Sneakers," I said. He eyed my feet, then the dog still staring. "Get a camera. Motion trap. Call animal control if it's coon. Structural's on us then." I bought a cheap trail cam from the Walmart in town, zip-tied it to a joist facing the crawl entrance. Infrared, night vision, motion activated. Set it for 6:37 a.m. window. Checked footage next night. Black screen till 6:44. Then motion ping, dark shape low in frame, long, filling half the lens. No clear head, no limbs distinct. Just bulk shifting gravel, pausing, dragging forward. 4 blunt impacts on plywood exactly under my steps. Screen glitched at the end, infrared blooming white like heat spike. Battery dead. Card wiped clean. That's when the smell migrated inside. Started faint. That iron earth tang clinging to the kitchen linoleum, strongest, where the trailer's tongue met the pier blocks. Wiped it up. Came back wetter. Pooled under the fridge overnight, thin and reddish. Dogs outside pawed at skirting now, whining, refusing food bowls till I stomped. One night the pit mix snapped at his own paw, drawing blood, still fixated on my crawl space. Routine became armor. I varied steps, long strides, short shuffles, skipping the soft porch spot. It adapted. Took 3 mornings to match the new gate, but matched it. Parked truck 30 yards out, walked slow. Drags paced me underground the whole way. Called in sick once, came home noon. Silence till I hit the bottom step. Then full pattern, like hitting play. Learned my cough from chain-smoking breaks. Learned fridge door squeak when I'd grab milk before bed. Learned the exact second my bedroom light clicked off. Thump under the mattress. Then slow circle, pause, exhale through floor vents. Neighbor lady 2 doors down, stoop smoker. Caught me prying skirting at dawn. "Heard it?" she asked, exhaling menthol. "My cousin had one last year. Moved out. They dug after. Crawl space twice normal depth. Walls smooth like scraped. Found old well under there. Collapsed. Things climb up wells." I nodded, kept prying. Flashlight caught smooth clay walls. Unnatural, extending deeper than trailer length. Vapor barrier shredded into strips like welcome mat. 4 parallel grooves climbing joists toward my porch. "Get holy water," she said. "Or bleach the vents. They hate bleach smell." I bought bleach, poured gallons down floor drains. Smell neutralized 2 days. 3rd morning, scratching resumed, now with faint gurgle underneath, like choking on chemicals. Decided to test the learning curve proper. Called in for Friday night shift. Told them I'd cover double Saturday. Drove to Walmart lot instead. Killed time scrolling job. Listings on dying phone. Parked 2 streets over at 3:17 a.m. Walked the long way through backlots. Approached from Woodside. No step rhythm. No phone ping. No cough. Reached the trailer quiet as fog. Stood 10 feet out in the elm shadow. Dogs across park lifted heads. Stared my way. Not at porch. At me. Wind died. Sodium lights buzz steady orange. 6:47 a.m. Exact. My normal porch time. Scratch drag from directly below the top cinder block. 4 beats. Pause. 4 beats. Pause. Exhale through vents. Fridge hummed like on cue. Bedroom light flickered though unplugged. I stepped forward, deliberate. Long stride. Heavy right foot first. Immediate match underneath. Heavy right thud. Drag left. Pause matching my key fumble. Froze on bottom step. It froze too. Waited. Cough deliberate. Smoker rasp. Cough echoed back from joists. Wetter. Pulled phone. Hit ringtone. Beat pause synced perfect. Something exhaled long under the floor. Not dog. Not human. Ribcage too deep. Throat too resonant. Knew I'd come late because dogs betrayed me. Knew I was testing because pattern held. Reached down slow. Gripped skirting panel nearest my boot. Plastic cracked under fingers. Ripped up hard. Beam caught it square. Pale bulk filling half the crawl. Low slung. Elongated. No face proper. Just wet gleam where mouth should be. Nostrils flaring black. Limbs folded wrong. Too many joints. Ending in 4 thick digits per hand. Nails blunt from plywood abuse. Chest heaved recognition. Eyes. No pupils. Just sheen catching infrared glow from cam I'd forgotten. It lunged, not up, sideways fast as lizard, slamming joist that shuddered floor. Skirting panels popped across trailer length. Dogs erupted barking frenzy. I bolted porch, yanked truck keys from pocket mid-stride. Engine caught first turn. Gravel sprayed as I fishtailed out. Rear view. Dogs tearing at skirting. Woman on stoop yelling. Pale shape spilling from crawlspace onto mud. Too long, too low, scuttling after truck before darkness swallowed it. Drove till gaslight pinged, slept in cab at rest stop, called landlady from payphone at diner. Breaking lease, structural hazard, she sighed. Told you about the well. They come up wells. Never went back. New place, concrete slab, no crawlspace. Still check vents at night. Still vary steps climbing stairs. Still silence phone before unlocking doors. Dogs knew first. They always do. Some routines you break. Others learn you first. Fog has a way of making the empty road feel crowded, like something's been walking beside you the whole time without making a sound. When headlights finally catch a figure standing motionless at the bridge's edge, you don't always have time to question why she's wearing white in a downpour. My name is Harper, and that night on the 2-lane highway cutting through Western Virginia's mountains, I was the only car for miles. The fog had rolled in thick off the river valley, turning the world into a tunnel of wet blacktop and looming pines that seemed to lean closer with every curve. My wipers slapped rhythmically, headlights carving just enough cone ahead to keep 50 safe, radio static hissing low country tunes between dropouts. The bridge appeared sudden, a low concrete arch spanning black water that dropped away sharp on both sides, railings rusted and leaning. No warning sign, no reflector tape, just faded yellow lines marking where pavement met void. Truck headlights had cut through the soup 10 minutes back, high beams painting the treeline gold before vanishing around a bend. Since then, nothing but my own engine drone and the river's distant rush below. She stood right at the bridge's foot, passenger side, white dress glowing faint against the fog like a smudge on glass. No raincoat, no umbrella, arms loose at her sides. Long dark hair hung wet to her waist, face shadowed under a veil that fluttered slight in the windless air. Figure slender, early 20s maybe, posture patient, like she'd been waiting long enough not to care about timing. Brake lights flared red. I eased to shoulder gravel, hazards blinking. You okay? I called through cracked window, engine idling rough. She turned slow, deliberate. Face pale under veil, eyes dark hollows catching dash glow. Can you take me home? Voice soft, accented slight. Local hills, vowels rounded slow. No panic, no shivering, just fact. Sure, I said, reaching across to pop the passenger lock. Where to? She slid in smooth, dress-whispering seat vinyl. Car interior dropped 10 degrees instant, vents blowing chill despite heater cranked. Veil draped her lap, hands folded neat over damp fabric, wedding ring glinting dull silver. No purse, no phone, bare feet leaving wet prints on floor mat. Door clicked shut. Up the highway, she said. Past the second curve. House with the white fence. I nodded, signaled left, merged slow. Fog swallowed the bridge behind, taillights lost in 5 seconds. Bad night to be out, I said, glancing over. You from around here? Silence first. Heater rattled against sudden cold. Then, I still haven't made it home yet. One line, delivered flat, like answering weather. No elaboration. Eyes forward, veil edge stirring faint as if breathed on. I let it sit. Radio static cleared to half a song, pedal steel whining lonely. Harper Road, right? I tried. Used to know a family out that way. No answer. Hand stayed folded. Ring caught passing headlights from oncoming. Truck. 18-wheeler rumbling opposite lane. Driver tipping nod through glass. Its beams swept her side. Lit veil translucent for heartbeat. No face underneath. Just shadow and curve of cheekbone. Cold deepened. Heater fought losing battle. Breath-fogging windshield corners. Rearview showed empty backseat, duffel bags undisturbed. Side mirror caught veil flutter again, pale fabric lifting like wind through cracked window I'd not opened. You cold? I asked. Blanket in the back. Head shook minimal. Almost there. Highway climbed gradual, fog thinning patches to show guardrail drops, and river far below. Second curve loomed, wide hairpin, warning sign bent from past wrecks. White fence appeared right side, pickets leaning, gate hanging open on rusted hinge. House beyond dark, windows black squares, porch sagging under overgrown trumpet vine. I slowed, turned into drive. Gravel crunched under tires, headlights washing, clabbered, faded gray. No lights, no truck in yard. Yard choked with weeds to axle height. This it? She nodded. Thank you. Door handle clicked. Cold rushed out as she stepped down, dress trailing mud from bare feet. Walked toward house without looking back. Veil catching moonlight sliver through thinning cloud. Porch boards creaked under weight. Screen door hinges screamed once, then silence. I waited standard polite minute, engine rumbling. Gravel shifted as I backed out, aiming for highway. Rear view empty, no figure on porch, no white shape in drive. Just fence posts sliding past. Highway straightened. Heater clawed back to warm. Fog lifted enough for stars pricking through. Radio found signal, announcer's voice cutting static. Another wreck on 52 near the old bridge. State police on scene. Motorists advised. Brake lights ahead. Flashing blue across wet road, silhouettes moving slow. Bridge outline loomed 100 yards off. Barricades funneling traffic single lane. Cop waved me down, flashlight beams circling palm slow. I rolled window. What's going on? Woman in white, he said, standing right at the abutment. Third report tonight. You see anything? Chill unrelated to night air. Picked her up. Dropped her at Harper Road. White House, sagging porch. He frowned, beam dropping to notepad. Harper Road ain't been inhabited 20 year. Bridge washed the house out in 98. Whole family gone. Radio squawked behind him. Another truck slowed, driver leaning out. Cop nodded me through, eyes staying on mirror. Highway clear past wreck scene. Heater finally winning, vents blowing hot. Side mirror caught movement, veil edge fluttering faint at passenger corner. fabric lifting like caught in draft. Glanced right. Seat empty, seatbelt swinging gentle. Kept eyes forward. Radio announcer droned weather update. Low pressure, moving east. Veil fluttered again in mirror. Pale curve rising higher, almost brushing headliner. Wet footprints faded slow on floor mat, evaporating from toes back. Harper Road turnoff appeared right. Fence post still there, gate swinging lazy. House dark, porch empty, no footprints in drive gravel. 20 minutes later, lights of next town ahead. Veil settled in mirror now, draped across seatback like forgotten scarf. Radio static spiked, pedal steel cutting back in mid-note. Heater quit blowing hot, vent silent. Pulled into gas station lot, sodium lights buzzing overhead. Dome light harsh yellow when door opened. Passenger seat dry, vinyl cracked patterns undisturbed. No veil, no dress, no mud prints. Heater vents cold metal. Paid cash inside, bought black coffee. Attendant ringing register said, "Heard about the bride?" I froze. What bride? Highway ghost, white dress veil, asked for ride to Harper Road. House gone since flood took the bridge deck. They say she died waiting for wedding, groom never showed. Fog night like tonight she walks back from river. Coffee burned tongue. Dropped her there. He shook head. Nobody gets dropped. She vanishes mid-ride. Folks see veil and mirror after till they cross county line. Back in truck, coffee steaming cup holder. Rear view clear. Highway stretched empty both directions. Fog banked river valley below. Bridge silhouette faint under moon. 10 miles on, veil flickered corner of eye. Mirror showed it draped seatbelt now, fabric undulating slow like underwater. Radio static swallowed song complete. Heater vents blue faint floral. Bridal bouquet crushed underfoot. Past county line sign. Veil gone. Heater warm again. Radio clear. Never drove that stretch fog nights. Still check mirrors when stations fade. Some rides end when you stop the car. Others follow till the road remembers to let go. Places have memories longer than people, and some hollows in the North Carolina backwoods remember debts paid in bone that were never fully settled. My name is Lucas, and I'd been riding shotgun with the local ranger for 3 weeks, mapping unmarked trails for a state park expansion project. The job paid steady, got me out of the city, and let me pretend I was doing something noble, preserving wilderness for future generations. What I didn't expect was learning that some wilderness had been preserved for something else entirely, something that still collected on old promises during relocation years when the Cherokee were marched out of these mountains. The ranger was a wiry man in his late 50s, skin like leather, eyes that scanned the treeline like he expected company. He drove a battered F-150 with a rack of lights on top and a shotgun bolted behind the seat. Not for bears, he'd said once, but contingencies. His name stayed Ranger in my head. He never offered his, and I never asked. We spoke in clipped sentences about elevations, water sources, and camper traffic patterns. Conversation stayed professional until the day we turned into Cedar Hollow. Cedar Hollow didn't show on most maps. A deep crease in the Nantahala Range, tied to one of the forgotten Cherokee relocation routes from the 1830s. The Trail of Tears had funneled detachments through here. Thousands marched at gunpoint from North Carolina villages toward stockades, then boats on the Tennessee River, then the long death walk west. Official histories marked the main paths, but locals knew the side routes, the hollows where groups splintered off to rest or hide or die when fever or dysentery hit. Cedar Hollow was one of those. We'd gotten the call that morning. Missing camper 24 hours overdue. Young guy from Ohio, solo backpacker, pitched at the hollow's mouth per his permit. No fires allowed. Leave no trace principles. Ranger grunted when dispatch read the coordinates. Hollow got another one, he muttered almost to himself. I thought he'd said it wrong until he grabbed the shotgun and extra mags before climbing in. The drive down was steep, switchbacks chewed by erosion, gravel spitting under tires. Trees closed overhead. oaks and hickories giving way to rhododendron thickets that choked light. Sound dropped too. No birdsong, no insect buzz. Just tires on wet leaves and distant water trickle. Air hung heavy, moss scent laced with iron tang like blood left to rust. "Quiet down here," I said, more to break silence than anything. Ranger nodded without looking over. "Always is. Hollow likes it that way." He downshifted hard at the bottom, truck lurching into flat ground where the creek widened. Camper's sight sat obvious 50 yards in, blue tent sagging under dew, sleeping bag half unzipped outside, backpack upright against a mossy boulder. Fire ring cold, no char, rocks arranged neat, no footprints leading away, no sign of struggle. Ranger killed the engine. Quiet crashed in. "Stay by truck," he said, grabbing his pack and shotgun. Voice stayed, even, but shoulders tensed. I followed anyway, boots sinking soft in leaf litter. Sight felt staged. Tent zipper, half open, like interrupted. Stove unlit beside untouched ramen packet. Backpack unzipped main pouch. Map, headlamp, protein bars, pristine. Sleeping bag pad deflated slow, like stepped off minutes ago. Ranger knelt by fire ring first. No ash, no char, clean as new. I scanned upslope. Guy pack up in dark. Headlamp still has juice. He stood, circled tent slow, stopped at back corner. "Look here. Clean circle in dirt, 6 feet diameter. Perfect. Edges sharp like mowed. Inside, bones. Not scattered. Arranged deliberate. Ribcage centered, vertebrae arched around like halo. Long bones fanning spokes, skull offset top with jaw hinged open. Human-sized, fresh enough meat scraps clung pink to ends. No drag marks into circle. No tracks out. No blood spray, no claw rips, no fabric shreds. Iron smell hit then, sharp under moss. Stomach turned. "Bear," I managed. Ranger crouched, gloved hand hovering over ribs without touching. "Bear drags, scatters, chews. This is..." Paused, eyes tracing circle edge. "Cleaned." Picked up femur end. Held to light filtering through canopy. Ends polished smooth. No marrow scrape, no tooth marks. "Picked," he said. "Like vulture work. But vultures don't fold clothes." Glanced where he'd nodded earlier. Camper clothes folded military precise on boulder 6 feet from circle. Socks inside boots. Shirt tucked pants. Jacket draped top. Damp but undisturbed, like set down for laundry. Ranger stood, shotgun low across thigh. Hollow got this year's share. I blinked. "What?" Said it plain. Hollow takes one every few years. Keeps balance. Turned slow circle, eyes upslope where rhododendrons thickened into walls. Shaman packed, back when they marched us out. Cherokee medicine man bargained with bone eater in this crease. Promised steady feed during relocation. Sick ones, stragglers, ones too weak for trail. Thing saved dozens by taking fewer. Debt never cleared, still hungers. Voice stayed conversational, like explaining park rules. No fear, no panic. Just fact. Iron smell strengthened. Mossy boulders uphill gleamed wetter than creek mist should allow. Roots tangled unnatural around clean patches. Dirt swept bare, no leaves, no twigs. Hollow floor unnaturally still, air thick enough to chew. "Missing persons," I said. "State police, SAR teams." Ranger snorted. "Send 'em. Find clothes. Find bones. Never find camper. Hollow keeps what it claims." Shotgun pumped casual. "We mark site. Report folded gear. Animal predation. Leave circle alone." Back toward truck slow. Eyes never dropping rhododendron line. "Won't follow uphill. Stays in crease. But don't camp here. Don't bring food. Don't bleed." Engine turned over rough. Bounced upslope faster than we descended. Transmission whining protest. Radio dispatch. Camper site. Located. Signs of bear activity. Clothes only. No body. Dispatch logged it routine. SAR teams rolled next day. Found same. Folded clothes. Bone circle. Pristine. No tracks. Helicopters buzzed hollow. No heat sigs. No disturbed canopy. Case went cold after 2 weeks. Camper's parents sent thank you card. Ranger filed report mentioning predator efficiency. I rode with him 2 more months. Never asked Cedar Hollow direct. Learned fragments. Bone Eater, older than Cherokee, older than Mounds. Pact renewed yearly. 1 life for safe passage through Crease. Relocation years. Took dozens. Now took tourists. Lost hikers. Anyone lingering past dusk. Always left bones clean. Arranged prayer wheel. Always folded clothes. Ranger never flinched at Hollow name after. But he'd park truck facing uphill always, shotgun ready, eyes on rhododendron walls. Once, during inventory check, found femur fragment in glove box, human, polished ends. Reminders, he said, tossing it creekward. Quit job end of season. City apartment felt claustrophobic first month. Too quiet, too clean. Dreams showed hollow floor, bone circle expanding slow, clean patches widening. Woke smelling iron under sheets. Avoid backwoods solo now. Still hike marked trails. Still check routes for swept dirt. Still fold clothes precise before bed. Some debts get passed down. Some hollows collect forever. If this story chilled you to the bone, hit that subscribe button on Hauntededfears for more Appalachian nightmares that don't stay buried. Turn on notifications. You don't want to miss when the hollow calls next time.